We need younger voices in our 3D printing division. My name is Leo Banner. I'm 52 years old, and I had just listened to my career being flushed down the drain by a supervisor who looked young enough to be my kid. Trevor Walsh had been with North Peak Engineering for just 3 months. I'd been there for 16 years. I stood inside his glass-walled office watching him fumble through documents he didn't understand. Behind him, through the window, I could see the production floor, 8 industrial 3D printers running in perfect harmony. Each of those machines followed calibration protocols I had created. Every tolerance, every parameter, every safeguard, that was my work. My mind. My hands. Leo, I really value everything you've done, Trevor said, eyes fixed on his tablet. But the field is evolving. We need new ideas and bold innovation. The board wants us to modernize. I had mentored 3 generations of technicians. I grew the department from 2 desktop units to a high-volume operation, bringing in $4 million a year. Apparently, none of that counted as forward-thinking anymore. When do you want me out? I asked. End of the week would be best. HR will sort out the transition. I gave a single nod. No yelling. No bargaining. I'd seen younger guys escorted out by security for less. I wasn't about to lose my dignity. I'll pack my desk. Actually, Leo, we'd prefer if you just grab your personal effects. Security protocol. Hope you understand. I understood all too well. They wanted me gone before I could prepare any handoff, before I could document what I knew, before I could make the transition easy. I walked back to my station, past the machines that had defined nearly 2 decades of my life. Jason, one of my techs, looked up from a calibration panel. Everything all right, Mr. Banner? Just fine, Jason. Keep those tolerances tight. I picked up my coffee mug, a photo of Karen, my late wife, and an old toolkit that belonged to my father. The rest, the manuals, the procedures, the repair guides, I left. Not out of spite, but because the most critical parts lived only in my head. As I approached the exit, I caught sight of Trevor through his office glass, phone to his ear. Probably already hunting for my replacement. Someone younger, cheaper, and completely unaware of the disaster waiting for them. I handed my badge to the security guard. No words exchanged. Behind me, the machines kept humming, for now. I'd started at North Peak back when 3D printing was still called rapid prototyping. Back then, we had 2 machines the size of dishwashers that couldn't print a coaster without warping. It was crude tech, but I saw the potential. While others dismissed it, I stayed late learning the software, understanding polymers, studying how environment affected results. Karen used to say I talked to those machines like they were old friends. She wasn't wrong. Each printer had its quirks. The Stratasys unit overheated easily. The old Dimension jammed if pushed too fast. But I learned their rhythms, their personalities, and coaxed reliable performance from them. When the company expanded the division, I was handed the reins. I developed protocols from the ground up: calibration, materials, maintenance, error prevention. I trained staff to spot issues before they caused downtime. We hadn't had a full production halt in 16 years. Then came Trevor, armed with an MBA in shiny ideas. He'd never run a printer in his life, but he had charts promising cost cuts and efficiency. He talked about AI and Industry 4.0 like they were magic wands that made experience obsolete. I warned him our setup was complex. Our 8 machines were a tightly woven system: material handling, climate control, QA, each depending on razor-sharp calibration. But Trevor only saw numbers: output, labor, cost. The signs started weeks ago. Trevor questioning my input, bringing in outside consultants unfamiliar with our machines, recommending automated calibration. I explained why it wouldn't work. He accused me of resisting progress. Last week, he asked for documentation. I told him everything was in the system. I didn't mention that the most vital data, the tolerance specs and environmental offsets, were locked in memory from years of fine-tuning. Not in any file, just trial, error, and countless sleepless nights. Now I was sitting in my truck, parked outside the building, watching Trevor through his office, wondering how long until the wheels fell off. That weekend, I turned to an old project, a carved wooden jewelry box Karen always wanted. I'd never found the time. Now I had plenty. Monday, I didn't drive to work. I stayed home sanding the box, wondering what would come next. At 52, I wasn't ready for retirement, but starting over wouldn't be easy. The 3D printing world is small. Word spreads fast. Trevor would shape the narrative. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. "Mr. Banner, it's Jason. Machine 3's drifting. I can't figure out why." I almost answered, almost guided him through the fix. But then I remembered Trevor's words, fresh perspectives. "I don't work there anymore, Jason. You'll have to ask Mr. Walsh. He said we should figure it out, that the manuals cover everything." The manuals? I nearly laughed. They barely touched the nuances, the HVAC shifts, humidity changes, concrete floor expansion. Those weren't documented. They were instinctual. "I'm sorry, Jason. My hands are tied." I hung up and went back to carving. The box was turning out beautifully. Karen would have loved the roses etched into the lid. Tuesday, another call. Now Machine 5 was acting up. By Wednesday, Jason was near panic. 4 machines misbehaving. QC rejecting nearly a third of parts. I didn't answer after that. Thursday, I drove past North Peak on a hardware run. The parking lot was full of unfamiliar cars, consultants, probably. Hired guns called in to solve avoidable problems. Friday morning, I was brushing varnish onto the box when the phone rang. Not Jason. "Trevor." "Leo, we need to talk. I don't work for you anymore, remember? We're experiencing issues. Would love your insight. As a consultant, like the machines had caught a cold." I set down my brush and looked out the window. The morning light danced across the trees. Karen loved mornings like this. "What kind of issues?" "Production delays. Quality problems. Nothing unmanageable, but your input would help. If it were truly manageable, he wouldn't be calling." "I might be available. My rate is $200 an hour. 4-hour minimum payment up front." A long silence. "That's steep, Leo. That's standard for emergency diagnostics. Take it or leave it." He took it. Told me everything I needed to know. Monday, I arrived with a temporary badge. The floor looked like chaos. 3 machines offline. The others struggling. Their motors sounded wrong. Uneven. Strained. Jason met me looking like hell. "Thank God you're here, Mr. Banner. Nothing's working right." I walked the floor, checking displays, listening to tones. The signs were all there. Calibration drift, environmental compensation off. "What have you tried?" Recalibrated per the manual. Had text from the manufacturer. Even brought in a Stratasys rep. "Machines say they're fine, but prints keep failing." I took out my phone, made notes. Exactly what I predicted. The initial drift had spread system-wide. Trevor showed up, stiff in his tailored suit. "So, Leo, what do you think? Quick fix?" "That depends. What have you changed?" "Nothing major. New consultant adjusted some parameters. Updated firmware, minor efficiency tweaks." Efficiency tweaks. I nearly smiled. "Show me." For 2 hours, he walked me through it. Lower temp settings for faster print times. Feed rate tweaks that looked fine on spreadsheets. Firmware updates that wiped my custom settings. Every change subtle, but critical. This is recoverable, I told him. But you'll need to undo nearly everything your consultant touched. How long? At least 2 weeks. Maybe more, depending on baseline damage. His face drained of color. We've got deadlines, contracts. We can't afford that. Should have considered that before replacing the guy who built the system. He stood there, weighing the cost of keeping me versus the cost of failure. What do you need? Full access, unrestricted authority, no interference. Done. I spent the rest of the day logging machine states and mapping a recovery plan. It would take time, but I'd bring the system back from the edge. And this time, I'd get paid what I was worth. But as I worked, something hit me that made me stop. They hadn't just altered my calibration parameters. They'd modified them in a way that made the entire system rely on constant manual input. Without someone who understood the interplay between temperature, humidity, material flow, and print quality, the machines would never operate reliably. Trevor hadn't just let me go. He had broken a system that couldn't be easily repaired. Wednesday morning, while fine-tuning Machine 7, I stumbled across something that chilled me. The maintenance log showed software patches I never approved. Someone had accessed the system after my departure and changed critical parameters controlling inter-machine communication. I flagged Jason. Who installed these updates? He frowned at the monitor. Mr. Walsh brought in a consultant last week from a company called Nexora Labs. Said they were optimizing network performance. Nexora Labs? The name didn't ring any bells, but the modifications were far too complex for a typical consultant. This wasn't about streamlining, it was about making us reliant on them. I spent the next hour combing through system logs, tracing the digital fingerprints. What I uncovered made my skin crawl. The consultant had done more than tweak code. They'd installed remote monitoring tools, giving Nexora Labs access to our production data, calibration settings, and full manufacturing processes. Jason, where's the contract for this consulting work? Mr. Walsh has it. Why? I didn't reply. I marched straight to Trevor's office and knocked. I need to see the Nexora Labs agreement. Trevor looked up, irritated. Why? The update's causing issues. Just show me the contract. He pulled up a file and turned his screen toward me. What I read confirmed my worst fears. Nexora wasn't a consultant. They were a 3D printing service bureau, a direct competitor. The contract, disguised as a systems optimization deal, buried within the technical language, granted them access to our production metrics for quality control. They're not helping you, Trevor, I said. They're gutting your operation and stealing your IP. Trevor scoffed. What are you talking about? I highlighted the damning sections of the agreement. Check their website. He typed it in. Case studies filled the homepage. Companies that had ditched in-house printing for outsourced solutions. Just like us. Their updates are designed to destabilize your machines, I explained. And while they fail, Nexora collects your customer data, part specs, everything. When your systems finally collapse, they'll swoop in to offer their solution. Trevor's expression morphed from doubt to disbelief to dread. That would mean that you were duped and fired the one person who could have stopped it. He sat in silence, the weight of the realization sinking in. He had been at North Peak just long enough to be accountable, but not long enough to shift blame. Can you fix this? He asked softly. Maybe, but not in 2 weeks. It means rebuilding everything from the ground up. Months of work. How much? I hesitated, thinking of Karen's jewelry box back home. 16 years of loyalty that had earned me nothing. That depends, I said. Do you want it fixed properly, or do you want to keep pretending experience doesn't matter? For the first time since I met him, Trevor Walsh looked genuinely afraid. I left his office without answering. That afternoon, I gathered everything, screenshots, logs, contract copies, a full breakdown of the sabotage. That night, I called Marcus Wright, a friend who now worked in corporate security at a Fortune 500, but who started out as a machinist. He understood both machinery and networks. Leo, good to hear from you. Retirement treating you well? I'm not retired, I was fired. And I think I've uncovered something you might want to hear. I walked him through it all, the sabotage, the infiltration, the data theft. He asked sharp, technical questions that showed he got it. This is bigger than your company, he said. If Nexar is doing this to you, they're doing it elsewhere. Industrial sabotage like this? That's federal. What should I do? Document everything. Don't alert them. If they realize they've been exposed, they'll vanish. What about North Peak? We've got clients. That's not your responsibility anymore. Remember, you were fired. He was right. But it didn't sit well. Jason and the rest didn't deserve to have their department implode over someone else's poor judgment. The next morning, I returned to North Peak with a plan. Trevor looked like he hadn't slept. I've thought about it, I said. I can fix this, but on my terms. What are you suggesting? Shut down the 3D printing line for a week. Tell staff it's scheduled maintenance. During that time, I rebuild the software infrastructure using clean backups. A week of downtime will cost us a fortune, less than what Nixar is stealing from you daily. They're not just crippling your machines, they're duplicating your entire business. Every hour you remain connected to their system, they get stronger. Trevor considered this. How much? $50,000, plus a written apology to my team for the last 2 weeks. 50 grand? That's insane. That's the price of emergency cybersecurity in manufacturing. You can pay me or pay Nexara when they offer to save your operations next month. I watched him crunch the numbers. It was a steep price, but not compared to the cost of failure. Fine, he muttered. But I want a guarantee. If I can't restore full capacity in a week, you owe me nothing. That afternoon, I began shutting machines down. To outsiders, it looked like standard maintenance. But I was performing surgery, excising Nexar's code, isolating servers, restoring systems from memory. I worked 18-hour days, rebuilding calibration routines, testing every process. By Friday, I had clean systems on secured servers. But I wasn't done. I had one more surprise for Nixora and for Trevor. Monday, I powered everything up. One by one, the machines came online, humming in perfect sync. Every parameter locked in precisely. But behind the scenes, Nexora's tab had been redirected. Before removing their spyware, I reprogrammed it to send junk, fabricated part data, false specs, fake client info. At 10 a.m., I brought Trevor to the floor. Everything's operational. Full output restored. He watched, stunned, as the machines worked flawlessly. How long will it last? Forever, if no one tampers with the software again. I handed him a flash drive. This has everything: logs, timestamps, proof of data theft. Also a report I sent to the FBI this morning. His face turned pale. The FBI? Industrial sabotage and IP theft across state lines? That's federal. I thought they'd be interested in Nexar's tactics. That means that Nexar is about to have a very bad week. He stared at me, dazed by the fallout. Not just legal trouble for Nexora, but the humiliation of nearly destroying his department. What now? He asked. Now, your machines run right. Your data stays safe. And maybe you learn not to fire the people who understand your business. I headed for the exit. Oh, and Trevor, when you cut my check, make it out to Leo Banner Consulting. I'm starting my own firm. 3 weeks later, I was in my garage, putting the final touches on a custom toolset for a Phoenix client when the news hit. Nexora Labs had been raided. Executives charged with espionage, fraud, and IP theft. The investigation revealed sabotage across more than 40 companies. Jason called. Mr. Banner, did you see the news? I saw it. They're saying Nexora stole millions in trade secrets. That's wild. Not really. Industrial sabotage is a booming business. Mr. Walsh has been asking about you. Think he wants to apologize. I smiled. Tell him apologies are free. Consulting's $200 an hour. A week later, a call came from a small aerospace firm in Colorado Springs. They'd heard about what happened at North Peak. We want to do it right. No shortcuts. Clean systems from day one. That's my kind of project, I said. I drove to Colorado that Monday, Karen's jewelry box in the truck. I planned to give it to my daughter in Denver. Karen would have liked that, seeing something crafted with care passed to someone who'd appreciate it. The aerospace shop was immaculate. The kind of place that valued know-how over hype. It felt like the right place to begin a new chapter.